Hey everyone, welcome back to another Revit video. In this video, we're going to continue looking at pyRevit and all its fancy little tools, specifically looking at the selection panel. There's quite a lot here, but chances are it's going to help you select elements better. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, which I hope you do, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. And tells me you might have learned something. So let's get into the video. Okay, now, so pyRevit. If you haven't heard about pyRevit, don't know what it is, or not familiar with it, check out other videos I've done. We had an introduction. We went over the basic tools and whatnot, and some of these toggles here, which are quite interesting. It's basically a suite of a ton of different add-ins that are really useful, perhaps the most useful in Revit of all the add-ins, just kind of like all together, I would say it is. So let's get into this now. So looking at the selection panel, there's a lot here. We're going to work through it. So the first thing is pick. Now, very interesting here. When we look at pick, we see it says activate selection tool that picks a specific type of element. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and pick that. And so this is really interesting. So if you've used, let's say, Rhino, there's a selection filter in that you select the types of elements you want to select first. And then whenever you're swiping across the screen or anything like that, you're only selecting those types or that particular category of elements, which this is exactly what that reminds me of, which is really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and choose walls. Now, I could choose multiple things here, but we're going to first choose walls. And so, we're used to being prompted with something to do in Revit, but besides that, everything else, literally everything else is grayed out except the model. So let's go ahead and swipe here. Look at this. This is fantastic. So far I can see it's all walls, and that's totally what we want. So let's go ahead and try something else. So of course I can come back to this pick tool. We can choose something else. Maybe it's doors, for example, and I can swipe across and we can see only doors. Totally awesome and easy. I mean, 2 clicks to decide I want to see all doors. Instead of swiping across the whole thing, God knows how long that will take because your model is probably huge, not managed as well as it could be. No offense, because mine are as well. But then you have to come up here to filter, check none, and then choose doors. All of that instead of just choosing pick, doors, and selecting. Fantastic. We can also shift click this, and we are prompted with this. And this is really cool. So what is this telling me? Well, I actually can select favorite categories. Well, let's go ahead and make walls a favorited category because, let's go ahead and check none and go ahead and check walls. I'm going to apply. Cool. And now when we go to pick after selecting just walls, I choose pick and we can see, we basically just have walls. Analytical notes it's not a model element, so we don't need to worry about that, but walls is my only choice. That's interesting. And that's basically telling me what it's telling me what do I have to choose from. So if I shift click pick again, I'm going to just toggle them all. Why not? Check all of them on, apply. Okay. And now we go to pick. We can see we have a bit of an overwhelming list, and that's just because this is every category, every possible thing that could be selected in all of Revit, which may not appear in this view. So what I like to do instead is go ahead and clear out my favorites, which would then prompt what is currently in my view. So let's uncheck all of those, apply. So you can decide whether you want to mess with favoriting things or not, because the second you mess with that is going to kind of mess with what you have to select from, everything like that. Just know that you're selecting from these. So I would actually either take the time to not edit this and not worry about it, or just go through the things that you really care about editing and really picking quickly. So that kind of a thing. Cool. So then we move down to pick detail elements. Well, what is this going to do? Well, obviously it's going to pick all 2D elements. Now I have none in here, but I'm going to go ahead and draw just some lines across the screen here to get an idea if this works. And so what we can do is go ahead and pick detail elements. I'm going to swipe across the whole screen and look what only will be selected. It is these 4 lines, which is really great stuff. So cool. That one's pretty self-explanatory, and I bet this one will be as well. Pick model elements. So if I do this and I swipe across the screen, let's see what happens. Well, I get everything that is a 3D element, a model element, that kind of a thing. But what do I not get? I do not get these 5 lines that I just drew. And this, I would also not get tags or text or, things like that are not considered 3D elements. So really great, easy, all about picking, which is great. So here we go. Next is set work sets. And before we get into that one, I want to say that depending on what you have selected, you will or will not be able to interact with that specific tool in basically all of pyRevit, but specifically the selection panel, because obviously we're dealing with what we have selected and how it works and things like that. And so that matters a lot. So you'll notice the set work set is not highlighted. I can't pick this at all. I can't work with it, but I can select an element, come over to the pyRevit tab, and I can see, ooh, set work set, cool. But first, before we do that, I want to show you my work sets. And so what I have in this is shared levels and grids, architecture, and structure. Okay, I want to make sure that architecture is my active work set because that's really what I care about the most, and that's what's probably going to end up with most elements. Now, that said, I want to select some of these elements and show you that the work set I've put them on is shared levels and grids. So let's go ahead and just select all of these elements here. And I can see that my work set is currently shared levels and grids. Now I'm going to come over to the pyRevit tab with these selected still and go ahead and press set work set, because this is going to set the active work set from the selection. And you'll notice my active work set down here at the bottom is architecture, and I'll set work set. Now this is not going to change this is not going to change the work set of these elements. See, they're still shared levels and grids, which is not correct in my mind, but you'll notice that the active work set at the bottom is now shared levels and grids. Why did this happen? What happened really? What happened was pyRevit took the active work set, which was architecture, and made it shared levels and grids, which was these elements that I have selected their work set. So basically make these elements current work set the active work set. Now, I don't mess with work sets a lot to the degree that I'm changing things, because I mostly put things in architecture. Obviously the grids and levels and all that have one for them, but everything else is going to be mostly architecture. Now, if you're someone who likes to organize work sets a different way and whatnot, and you have a ton of work sets, fine. This might be something you can use. You can select one of these elements and say, oh, I want to actually set the active work set to be what this element is. That's kind of up to you. I don't like that necessarily, but I can see where this tool could be useful, because it's basically doing the opposite of what I would expect. You would think, oh, it takes this element and just sets the work set of this element to the active work set. I would almost prefer that more, but that's okay. It's kind of doing the opposite, making the active work set from this element. Doesn't matter. Good to know. Moving forward, that's it. All right, isolate. Now, this one, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is kind of doing the same thing that if we were to come over here, we can isolate element, isolate category, that kind of thing. We can do that in Revit already, but it's a bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and just select these elements up here and go over to my pyRevit tab and then choose isolate. Once I do that, I am prompted with, again, everything in Revit, which can be a bit overwhelming. I will be honest to you, but I know that, for example, I have walls that I have selected. So we're going to go to, again, is going to be walls. So I'm going to check walls here. And so what is going to happen? Well, it's going to turn out to be that it doesn't care about my selection in this case, but it's pulling from all the categories. So knowing that, I've decided, I want to isolate, because that's the tool. I want to isolate walls. And I just did that. And that was just from everything. And now, that said, I didn't even have to select anything in Revit, because I can just click on this here and decide, what do I want to isolate of all the categories within Revit? And so maybe that is doors. So I'll click doors, and boom, there are all my doors. So it's pretty quick, to be honest, because what I would have to do otherwise, and of course we have to reset temporary hide, what I have to do otherwise is right click this door, or any door, come down here to the sunglasses and isolate category. Not too hard. Saves me a couple more clicks, but I don't know. It seems more intuitive to go through an isolate, just kind of blank isolate, and decide, I want to do this. I want to isolate that, which is pretty great. So with that said, we see something else that we're somewhat familiar with, and that's filter. And you'll notice, again, it's grayed out, so I need to start selecting some objects. So cool. Let's select those here. And I can come back to the pyRevit tab and see, look, filter is available. I like that. So filter. And so look at this. This is really interesting. So I can discard grouped elements, discard pinned elements, elements hosted on linked model, basically select those only. I can keep what is mirrored, or I can keep painted elements. Now, my guess is I don't have a ton of these in this particular model. So for example, what I want to do is I'm going to select all these objects here and just pin those. And so basically whenever we select them, we can start to see how this filter tool is actually working for us. So let's select everything here, go back to pyRevit, filter, and then discard grouped elements. Well, I don't have anything in groups, so basically everything's going to stay the same. I have my current selection still. Discard pinned elements. So you see my total number of elements here is 118. I can discard pinned elements. Boom, that whole bathroom goes away, and now I have 60 elements, that's really great. Really good stuff. Back to pyRevit, filter, elements hosted on linked model. I know I don't have any linked models in here, so whenever I click this, my entire selection goes away. Now looking at this next one, going to pyRevit and keep mirrored. Well, there are not a ton of things that are mirrored. In this case, I have a couple of mirrored doors. Now, I'm not sure what that necessarily means, because depending on how you orient these doors, they are technically the same direction. So let's come over here to, I'm just going to make a new wall, just as an example. We're basically going to do this live, and I am going to mirror this. So literally mirror that. I'm going to select all of these things here, come over to pyRevit, filter, and then keep mirrored. And we can see it appears to be only what is mirrored within like certain views. So like this to pyRevit and this to the selection or filter process is not technically mirrored, whereas in plan with everything selected, apparently those are. Now, I don't know what would happen if I were to draw a wall centered here, if these would then be mirrored, but we will give that a try. So keep mirrored, and then of course they're not. So great question. I'm curious if you know more about the keep mirrored selection filter. That I'd love to know that. Obviously, we can see that these look mirrored, but I don't know if I went through the process of mirroring, if that's enough, or it's just close enough to being actually mirrored. Great. Wonder. Okay. So selecting something else, we can come back over here to filter and then keep painted elements. Now, here's one. I like this a lot, because how do you find out what objects, what elements are painted, have paint on them, whatever? Well, there's this way in pyRevit. I can filter and then keep painted elements. In this case, I have specifically painted some of these elements, the faces of some of these walls. Now, this is a fantastic way of determining what is painted in your project in 3D very quickly. What's another way? Well, I can go ahead and make a material schedule, and I can add a field that is specifically looking to elements that are painted. Now, it tells you if the material applied to an object is painted or not in that sense, and then I can filter that way and then select all of those objects from the schedule, come to 3D and see that, but that would take so long, and besides that, it's not as simple as simply selecting, filtering, and then keeping painted elements in my selection. That is great. That might be my favorite so far, because I guarantee you in most of your projects there will be some rogue painted walls, and maybe you want it there, maybe that's on purpose, maybe not sure, but regardless, that's really cool. So then here, moving on to select, which always love select. There is a ton here, and I honestly will not cover them all because there's a ton. Okay, and again, we're going to cover the same thing here. We're going to encounter the same thing where we have a ton of these things grayed out, and that's just because I don't have certain elements selected or something like that. I need to activate more processes here. So we can see here, look, add tagged elements. Well, I can simply add tagged elements, in this case, to my selection. Now, there's my selection, but I could add any element that is tagged. When I do that, please select one with it. I don't have any tags here, so that's why I get that. And then find and select entities without dimensions. Okay. Well, I can select specific things that don't have dimensions. Well, walls. Well, then that means I'm just going to change my selection to all the walls that don't have dimensions, which, don't get me wrong, that's nice, but just know that that's what that is. Something I will point out is that everything that's here highlighted, basically that I can use now, doesn't involve a selection. So here we go. Find and select entities without tags. Well, like I said before, that's going to be just about everything. So that's just kind of the way that works, because I don't have anything tagged here. Select all clouds of a specific revision. I don't have revision clouds in here, but I can select all the clouds based on specific revisions. So adding more selections would allow me to, or adding more revisions would allow me to select those revision clouds specifically to those, which is really great, because obviously there are parameters that I can fill out based on those clouds, and then that would then reflect back into a revision schedule, anything like that. So that's great to see. And then finally, select element types. Just clicking that just brings me, literally, this is all the types of all the elements in my entire project, which is a giant mess. And I will be honest, this is probably something I'm not going to use unless I'm looking for something way, way, way super specific. And obviously that's very possible that I might be, but nonetheless, I don't really want to mess with this most of the time. So, and that's just kind of how it is. Pressing this is going to give me, yeah, okay, not much. Okay, so then finally, here's some interesting parts here. So I'm going to skip these m_append, m_write, and m_read, basically memory. I'm going to skip those for now and come to this copy state and paste state, which is great. So here we go. I want to actually read this to you so you get an idea of what's happening, and so I don't just click a button and something happens. Here, copy state. Copies the state of desired parameters of the active view to memory. Visibility graphic settings or zoom state, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to frame this part of my project right there. I'm going to click copy state, and what will pop up is, hey, what do you want to copy? Like, this is literally saying, what do you want to copy? Select the property to be copied to memory. So don't get hung up on memory, because memory is just, literally copy. I've clipped, on the clipboard, whatever, forget that. It's there. So there's view, zoom, or pan state, which is basically where I am in my whole view and what I'm looking at. Obviously the visibility graphics, which that's a lot of information. That's basically copying everything I have in my visibility graphics, which is awesome. I have my crop region, which is very interesting. We make some nice looking views that would be consistent, at least consistently cropped, or filter overrides. Let's do my view and zoom state. There we go. So nothing happened. Well, okay, nothing happened, but I know that it was copied. So let's come over here to my site plan. Again, I'm looking at my whole site plan, but you remember where we were panned and zoomed to in this floor plan view? I'm going to go ahead and paste that state. I'm just going to press paste state, and boom, look what happens. That's awesome. It's going to take me right there. Now, you will notice if you watched my previous video on toggles, this is basically synced views. Now, synced views is much better because I can have this area zoomed here, and then the second I open this site plan, I'm going to be looking at the exact same place and everything. So it's going to work perfectly. Obviously, that's going to vary per plan and elevation. Kind of keep those in sync and refer from one to the next type of view based on work plane, just knowing that that's how the sync views or the copy state will work when you're looking at the zoom. Okay, coming back over here, I can say, ooh, I want to copy now the filter overrides. And before I do that, I want to show you the filter overrides I have on this view. Going to visibility graphics, filters, there's my floors _ interiors, that kind of thing. So I can go to copy state and then filter overrides. Cool. And I'm literally prompted with the specific ones that I want to choose. So I only have one, so let's go ahead and select filters. And again, nothing will happen. Just kind of know what happened, because immediately what we're going to do is come over here, and if I open the visibility graphics of this view, I have no filters, none whatsoever. Okay, cool. So then I can simply go to paste state, and then what do I want to do? Well, I actually copied the view zoom in the last time I copied, basically. Or do I want to, in this case, paste the filters? Do I want to paste the view or the filters? Well, I just copied the filters. I want to have that pasted into this view so I can paste those. And then the cool thing is at this next window, where do we want this pasted? Well, I can have this pasted to the active or selected view, which is literally the one we have here, or I can have that pasted to this view's view template. Like, whoa, that is reaching pretty far into not only this view, but potentially tons of other views, which if you know what you're doing, obviously we just explained what this is, but knowing that what you're doing when you click this, it's really powerful, really cool. But for this, I want to just paste this on the active and selected view, which is this one, so we could see that filter populate. So, okay, nothing happened again, but I'm going to go to the visibility graphics, filters, and see, look, ta-da, there's the filter. Very cool stuff. And the nice thing about this, I guess, which is a bit of a fail-safe, is I can go over here and I can see, look, all of these are actually undo states. Like, I can choose to undo that. So visibility graphics, filters, I can see, look, ta-da, it's gone again. So really great. It's not just like it's done and you don't know how to undo it, or there's no way to undo it or anything like that. It's all something that you can undo, which is great. Really great stuff. Now, copying this here, crop region, it all works the same. I could show you a crop region of a view, copy that, and then go to another view and then paste that, and it'll change the crop region, which is awesome when it comes to aligning crop regions. Maybe you have floor plan views that you're looking at very specific regions. You have everything cropped in a specific way. It's going to copy that perfectly, which is awesome. That'll save so much time. Okay, now we want to look at the fun stuff, yet weird and kind of different. I would say for the most part different. So here we go. We've got mappend, mwrite, and mread. We'll get to this memory drop down in a second. So obviously these two, mappend and mwrite, are currently grayed out. And that's because nothing is selected. So having to select things here, going to pyRevit, I can see, look, ooh, I can interact with these buttons. So let's go ahead and select a few things here. And I've selected these. And with those selected, maybe what I want to do at this point is go ahead and write them to memory. So what does that mean? Well, writing them to memory or appending them, either one of these will kind of do the same thing, is it's going to say, oh, I want to keep this selection. And it's not quite like saving the selection. If you go to manage, it's not quite saving the selection. We'll get to that in a minute. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is write this, because writing this is basically saying, boom, this is it. This is the first time I'm doing that. I'm going to write it. Appending is like, okay, I'm going to add to it or alter it a bit or something. Whereas I'm actually going to read this too. Clear memory and append current selection. Works like the MC or the M+ button in a calculator. This is a project dependent memory. Basically, every project is going to have its own file. These are going to be specific files in your app data and local files. So that's not something you need to worry about, but what you do need to worry about is how this is going to work, and that is like the memory button on a calculator, which is really cool. If you're familiar with that, you can literally add a number to the memory and then recall that number at some point later, because let's be honest, we've used the calculator and we've had to remember multiple numbers at the same time, so it's good to have one built into the memory of the calculator. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and write that, and basically it's written. I can't even see that anything happened here, which it just happened. And how do we know what happened? Well, we can go ahead and press the read and see, look, boom, it's going to recall that selection immediately, which is fantastic. Now, the great thing is I can just go along my merry way, and I'm working on other things, and then all of a sudden I want to, read that selection. Boom, very easy. And this could be obviously a very intricate selection, which I probably recommend that it's something more than just a simple swipe, that kind of a thing. But you get the idea. That is simply recalling. Now, what do we want to do? Well, maybe we decide, we can look at what we have here selected and decide, oh, actually, I need to select these doors and these walls. Well, all I can come over here to do to pyRevit is append. And as soon as I do that, I can come over here and then go back and read that. And then now it's going to make sure, because I have appended or altered that current selection, I basically added these walls and doors to the selection, that they'll now show up, which is great. And I can always recall those back with the mread, the memory read. Now, besides that, we have this complete memory dropdown, which there's quite a lot here. But the fun thing about this is I can actually cycle between all of the elements that are selected in my memory, just by going by next and next and next, that type of a thing. So look at this. This is really interesting. I can quickly go to all of these different elements that are selected in my memory, which is great. I don't necessarily see myself using that like a ton, but it is something that's pretty nice because you can always see them cycling through. Now, maybe I decide, well, it's this I don't really want in the memory anymore, that specific element. I can simply go to pyRevit memory and then deduct that. So remove that. So if I recall this here, I get everything but that wall selected that I had before, at least, which is interesting. Now, that's cool. It's not like, oh no, I'm stuck with this. I need to reselect everything and append it or write it all back. No, you can deduct things that way, which is interesting. And then obviously we can clear, if I clear this and then I read, well, I get nothing because I just clear my memory, that's good. That's how it works. So maybe I choose these elements here. I'm going to add these back to the memory with write. And then coming over to memory, there's a couple other things here that we still have to look at, which is save memory as selection or purge memory files. So here we go. Save memory as selection. Now this is where coming all the way back here to manage and then selection. So I can edit this and I can see, well, I have no selections here. And I specifically have none for this reason, because maybe what I want to do is come over to pyRevit, memory, and then save memory as selection. Like I care about it so much. I want this saved beyond beyond Revit. Or beyond pyRevit. I want this saved within my file itself. So I can come back over to manage and then actually load a selection, or let's say edit. And I can see, ooh, there's my saved selection, which has a bunch of numbers. And obviously this is pulling from the app data folder and all that information. But what I can do is I can literally load that selection, which is fantastic. Of course, what I can do at this point is what I'd recommend anyways, is renaming this. So pyRevit selection 1. I mean, whatever, doesn't matter, but I at least have a nice name. Okay, cool. And so again, I can always come over here to load this, boom. Now, it would be nicer if this were in memory, but let's say I've moved on to something else. I've appended the memory, or I cleared the memory or something, and that's that. I can always recall it because I've saved it as a selection in Revit. Fantastic. So then finally, pyRevit memory. I can purge all my memory files, deletes all the temporary selection data in the folder. This will clear all the selection memory. So this is just doing a lot more than clear. Imagine this is exactly like going to manage and then purge, and not just purging everything, of course, but purging all of those specific memory files. So again, it's going to do more than clear, but purge. So if I merge this, the cool thing here is that we're getting basically a printout, and this is the printout from the specific location, this is literally the file, the pyRevit file that was saved in my app data that had all the information regarding all the different selections and things I had saved in memory at one point. It's just going to keep overriding it constantly to the point where once you purge it, it will finally all go away. So whether you do that or not probably isn't a big deal. Like, it's not going to slow down if you don't purge or anything like that, because they're so small and basically in the background. But something good to know. You know, if you're trying to purge things and clean up the model, something else to take care of, I guess. So that will do it for selection. There was a ton of things that we looked at, you know, from picking and isolating, filtering, selecting, and then all the memory stuff, which is really good stuff. It is going to really make your selection and filtering process throughout Revit, depending on the element, of course, very easy. You know, like the painting, still probably one of my favorites. The fact that I can easily select all painted walls or surfaces in the model in 3D without having to make a schedule. Come on, that's so easy and so awesome. So let me know what you thought of it. Leave comments in the comment section down below. And of course, please demolish that like button. It helps me out so much, and it tells me that you might have learned something. So stick around for another Revit video coming at you very soon. Have a wonderful day, and thank you very, very much for watching.